prognosis coming from conventional medicine is coming from a form of medicine that is suppressive in nature and therefore worsens the outcome by its suppressive nature. So don't take the prognosis of what conventional medicine says. Decide for yourself how you want the outcome to be. Samuel Hahnemann in the Organon, the founder of homeopathy, talks about that. When you suppress symptoms, the vital force needs to strengthen itself against the external factor, which ultimately strengthens the disease. So by suppressing, we strengthen the disease. It has to push harder to go against the suppression. And it might pop out another way, a worse way. Usually it's deeper, it's worse.
Welcome to the Health Fix podcast, where health junkies get their weekly fix of tips, tools, and techniques to have limitless energy, sharp minds, and fit physiques for life. Hey, health junkies. On this episode of the Health Fix podcast, I'm going to be talking about the mind and its most powerful activity to help us in health and where the true root causes of illness lie, especially when we're talking about chronic illness, autoimmune conditions, things of that nature, the tough to treat cases. Now, Dr. Moshe Daniel Block is going to join me today on the podcast, and he's a fellow naturopathic doctor who, through overcoming the autoimmune condition myasthenia gravis, created a holistic counseling method blending mind-body medicine and psychology, and he calls it the Vis Dialogue, which will explain all of what that means in the podcast. Now, Dr. Moshe received his training in naturopathic medicine from the Canadian College of Naturopathic Medicine in Toronto, Ontario, Canada, and he graduated in 2000, so he's a little bit ahead of me in the game. Now, he went on to also complete a homeopathic master clinician course in 2003. So he's going back to some old school medicine. Cool stuff. We'll be talking about that today on the podcast too. Now, he's the author of 2 books, The Revolution of Naturopathic Medicine, Remaining True to Our Philosophy, and then also a book about the philosophy and practice of naturopathic medicine and holistic counseling. And this is where he introduces his method, the Vis Dialogue. So in this podcast, we dive into trends we're seeing in naturopathic medicine that we don't exactly love, what we do like, what's happening in the world of naturopathic medicine. We also talk about what he's learned in 25 years of practice, helping thousands of patients achieve life-changing results. We talk about the root of autoimmune conditions and chronic health conditions and why homeopathy, naturopathic medicine, and mind-body medicine are primed to help in these particular cases. We also dive into why suppressing symptoms strengthens chronic illness, why getting sick is a sign of our thinking. Now, it's not all in your head, but it kind of is. We'll talk about that. And we also talk about the difference between different types of naturopathic doctors. We talk about what is this Vis thing, which, by the way, it's the healing power of nature. We'll dive into that. We're also going to talk about homeopathy, and I have not brought that up on the podcast. Homeopathy is a like cures like type of medicine that was created by Samuel Hahnemann back in the 1800s, and it's kind of fallen out of popularity, but it does have some powerful capabilities, and so we're going to bring that to light today. And then we're also going to talk about not holding on to your diagnosis, prognosis, and really deciding for yourself how your health outcome is going to be. And while you're listening to this podcast, that is the biggest takeaway. I want you to really be thinking about how can you change your outcome in your health. So let's introduce you to Dr. Moshe Daniel Block. Dr. Moshe, welcome to the Health Fix podcast.
Thank you so much. Honor to be here. Lots of pleasure. Thank you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to talk to fellow NDs. I just love to hear like the stories and what you're up to, and also how you got into becoming a naturopath. So do tell. I love this part of the podcast.
Yeah, cool. Me too. I love this topic. So I was like always sick as a kid, and there was a lot of suffering with that. You know, missing school, missing friend stuff, just being sick.
Right.
And I had this feeling when I was a kid, I want to help people so they don't have to experience like what I experienced. And I was also kind of like a bit of like a science nerd. I like science stuff. So naturopathic medicine was almost like it was like I was going to say a no-brainer that offered this balance of healing because I didn't want to be a straight up medical doctor. I recognized the issues with that even as a young kid. And and I didn't want it to just be a sort of woo kind of healing thing. Although I'm much more woo woo than the science part. Like I am what people would call woo woo. I'm very much into things that I find profoundly healing and deeply true and scientific, but science hasn't caught up yet, right? So I chose naturopathic medicine because it offered this balance of, well, science and rooted in this in the conventional sciences, and then these other modalities like homeopathy and acupuncture and counseling and heal, like beautiful holistic aspects.
I agree. More tools in the toolbox. And for those of us that are nerdy, it's like, I'm like, oh, wait, I can make teas and I can make tinctures. Like how fun is that? I can do all these fun things. Whereas with conventional, yeah, I weighed it out and I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna give pills or I'm gonna become a surgeon or I'm gonna, do procedures. And I'm like, well, that sounds fun. I like the other better. I'm guessing you found
Yes.
all the different things we could do, like fun.
I I did exactly. Fun has definitely been a motivating factor for me. I remain a kid at heart. And conventional medicine is, I still think it offers a pretty strong way of giving us heroic medicine when it's necessary
Yeah.
for crazy emergencies where your life is on the line and the symptoms have to be completely controlled to save a life. And that's a beautiful thing that it offers. But for chronic illness,
Yeah.
it has very little to offer because its model is still based on the very thing that makes it good to for emergency is suppress the symptoms. And suppressing symptoms is not good for in the long run because it just worsens. So, Samuel Hahnemann in the Organon, the founder of homeopathy, talks about that. When you suppress symptoms, the vital force needs to strengthen itself against the external factor to which ultimately strengthens the disease. So by suppressing, we strengthen the disease. It has to push harder to go against the suppression. And it might like pop out another way, a worse way. Usually it's deeper, it's worse. So that's not really a good solution for chronic illness. We want to be, addressing the root of illness.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think this is where naturopathic medicine shines. I mean, this is where our root of medicine came from. And you and I've talked about before I hit record that unfortunately we've kind of lost that. We've now found like there's a nutraceutical to counter a symptom. So now we're coming very into that same paradigm.
Yeah, exactly. It's the allopathic paradigm. So instead of using, let's say, a big pharma drug, patented drug, we're using nutraceuticals in the same model, which is to address the symptoms of illness rather than the cause. And that's a lesser evil because in general, the substances that we offer to as nutraceuticals are less toxic, less harmful, have less widespread physiological action in the body, but it still does the person a disservice in them not recognizing their beautiful responsibility and involvement in their healing. I believe after 25 years of practice that we get sick for a reason. And the reason is that we are stuck in misunderstanding some aspect of ourself or aspect of creation, of our purpose here in life. So we have to recognize that, and then we're liberated from if we could call it karma or stuckness, and then that heals the body, ultimately meaning that our false perception of reality is the very root, in my awareness, of what makes us sick. So getting sick is simply a sign of the problem of our thinking.
Mhm.
And all the different modalities can assist in moving the body and help support the body, but ultimately the most important factor is the mind. That's my opinion after, having gone through my own illness and working with people for the last 25 years.
Isn't it wild how you come to that realization? I'm in 17 and probably at about 10, I was like, something's missing here. Something's
Yeah.
missing. And you hit it the nail on the head. A lot of people haven't heard about the Vis. This is your body's inhale, like this is you. This is your inherent ability to heal. And in naturopathic medicine school, we talk about a year one, and then pff, it's like gone with the wind.
We pay it lip service.
Yes.
We put it in our flyers.
Right.
And, just to distinguish between what we're talking about, the problem lies at the level of the education, like at the college level. But there's lots of brilliant NDs out there doing their thing and totally applying the V's. I would not say that they're a majority, especially with more younger generations of naturopathic doctors coming out. But the more elder practitioners they're down with the V's. So our profession is made up of those who are in the know, like us, and who love the V's and who want to understand the mysteries and continue to unfold with that. And then those who are simply, went into naturopathic medicine because they needed a career, they wanted to be a doctor, and they just did what they learned. So they're not self-inspired, or they're not inspired from the source of nature, which is like really the source of the soul that teaches directly through the heart. So that potential is always there for everybody, but there has been, some misleading by um, the confusion of identity that naturopathic medicine has, and believing that we have to gain credibility by emulating conventional medicine.
Yeah.
So while they're driving off the cliff and humanity is recognizing that, we're trying to emulate that model, which is kind of a dead model, and it's a shame. It shows you that there is some corruption there at the college level, unfortunately.
Yeah. Yeah. Sadly, I mean, I don't ever want to give Bastyr a bad name because I had a great education. However, I get it in terms of they're trying to keep up. They're trying to give us credibility so we're not quacks. And you know what? I hate to say it, you go into it knowing that you just got to know if anyone who's, got family members who might want to be a naturopath, you have to go in, you got to get a tough skin. I can't
Yeah.
say anything else other than that because you're going to get called a quack. You're going to get, you're going to get beat up. And there's going to be a little bit of, if you let it happen, like I did for some years, I let it get to me. And then it kind of turned me towards is everything I'm doing a joke. And then I'm like, wow, wait, no, no.
Yeah. No, absolutely. One of the most important determinants for health is a person's ability, openness, willingness to be themselves. So, just be who you are. Don't filter your voice. Don't resist your joyful inclinations to be you. Like your unique flower nature, just be it. And conventional medicine, naturopathic medicine, what we're talking about, has a very beautiful, unique flowerness to offer to humanity. But we're making the mistake of trying to emulate
Yep.
to gain credibility rather than if you build it, he will come, If you are yourself, they will come. And people, like, that's a fact. Like the amount of money that people are spending to seek, practitioners outside of the conventional box is enormous. That's why the pharmaceuticals, morphed a little bit into nutraceuticals to try to, take a bite out of that market. I really think that naturopaths have to not ask for permission, just to shine our light,
Yeah.
just to bring our message.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. I absolutely agree. And I hope that, I do know that I've got some naturopaths that are listening to this podcast, and I hope everybody hears this because we do need to be ourselves and not try to follow a broken system because we're going to become more broken. And of
Yeah.
course that leads me into now and not and I don't want anyone to think they're broken. Don't mean that, but it just don't follow the model.
Well,
But
not permanently, not
yeah.
permanently, but we are all wounded. I think that's a fact, you know.
Mhm.
In the astrological, the wounded healer Chiron
Right.
is a very strong metaphor analogy for naturopaths and for healers. It's true, and through that wound, the light of God, the light of healing, shines because there's a Hebrew expression. It's a "Rofeh tov holech legehenom," which means a good doctor goes through hell. It means that you don't really have what it takes to really help people unless you yourself have suffered through your wound. I could give you countless examples of why that's true, but one example is like before I experienced depression, I had this attitude of like, "Oh, come on, just get over it. Like, oh, you're depressed. Come on, just get over it. Like change your mindset, get over it." But then when I got really deeply depressed, ironically, during my stint at naturopathic medical school, I understood and I could help people and I could have compassion for them. So there's that, definitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And interesting how naturopath school provoked depression. I ended up with anxiety at like out of control. And
Yeah,
I look at other classmates throughout the time frame and I'm like, wow, okay, we're probably seeing this isn't what we thought, right? We're probably thinking like, oh, this isn't, our bodies were thinking like, wait a minute. And the soul was like, wait a minute, this isn't what I signed up for. I want more
right.
plants and herbs and this.
And meditation and like loving nature and really getting into the subtleties of the healing power of nature. Any knowledge is good knowledge. It's a tool in the tool belt. So what we did learn is good knowledge.
Sure.
The problem is that it's imbalanced. It's not taught within within the light of holism. So differential diagnosis, pathology within the light of holism. How does this pathology come to take place as a result of this type of thinking, this form of suppression of emotion, this lack of dealing properly with one's sexuality? Like in the greater context to learn pathology would be a lot better of a educational process.
Hmm.
And I've worked with quite a few young doctors coming out of naturopathic medicine school, and they are traumatized by the process, and that's unfortunate. That I'm in favor of like rigor, like strong educational rigor and excellence in intellect. I'm good with that. But traumatizing students kind of flies in the face of what we're trying to do.
Right, right. No, it was a different. I mean, it's definitely a different time now compared to when we were there, but it also, kind of leads into where all of the rigor, those kind of things, it's great, but we miss the soul part of it. We miss really focusing on unlocking what we need to actually heal, being able to look deep, look within, and giving power over to the system versus and other doctors versus ourselves. And this is where I want to hear your story about myasthenia gravis and
Yeah.
how you've come to create your program for naturopaths now, looking at this thing like we've lost the power to go within.
Yeah, for sure. I'd be happy to discuss that. I just wanted to share one thing. I think
Yeah.
one of the greatest gifts, or maybe that's not the right word, one of the greatest assets that naturopathic medicine has access to is homeopathy. And I think that the health of a college can be like homeopathy is a barometer to measure the health of the college. And a lot of the colleges have been shouldering it out because it's too, vitalistic. It's too like cures like. It doesn't fall into the aromatic material based model of reality that unfortunately the colleges are adhering to. So that's a problem. Homeopathy should be front and center. It should be one of the main modalities that naturopaths use because of its efficacy, its gentleness, and yet power. It offers an incredible potential for healing and power, even if it's just for acute situations. Of course, for chronic illness, also very powerful. So unfortunately, to see schools just Xing it out or planning to is a sign that they're going in the wrong direction. It's truly like the canary in the mine, right? For the health of the program. My experience, so yeah, I did have a very interesting experience with illness. I was diagnosed in let me see if I could get this right. Seems like a long time ago. Okay. Wait a sec. I'm like forgetting. Oh yeah, 1995. There we go. I was diagnosed with myasthenia gravis. I was very, very sick. I could barely get out of a chair or out of a bed when I was lying down. I had paralysis of my arms, chewing, swallowing, double vision, droopy eyelids, et cetera, et cetera. And when I got diagnosed, I was told it's incurable, it's progressive, and it's potentially fatal. So I didn't like that. I didn't like that prognosis and that diagnosis. And I had in my mind, I had this feeling, no, I'm going to heal myself. That was my intention. So no matter what we're suffering from, having a strong, clear intention of what we want to get out of the experience is kind of important. Not to take the prognosis of conventional medicine as a be all and end all, because it's very powerful in creating this nocebo effect. People might be carrying cancerous tumors for decades, and then they get a diagnosis and they're dead a few months later.
Right.
So prognosis coming from conventional medicine is coming from a form of medicine that is suppressive in nature and therefore worsens the outcome by its suppressive nature. So don't take the prognosis of what conventional medicine says. Decide for yourself how you want the outcome to be. Pointer number one. So I did that. I just instinctively did that. Like maybe because I didn't like the the idea that it was progressive and incurable and potentially fatal. So I actually went to this place called the Options Institute a few months after my diagnosis. I was trying a lot of different things. Nothing was really helping, mildly, maybe like 5%, 10%, taking an edge off the symptoms, but I was still quite sick. I went to the Options Institute. That's the institution that Barry Neil Kaufman and Samaria Kaufman founded. They help autistic kids. They had an autistic child in the 70s. And they helped him through this process of mirroring for 2.5 years. They just mirrored what he did. If he spun plates, they spun plates. If he banged his head, they simulated that just until he realized, wait a sec, I'm not in my own isolated world reality. After 2.5 years, he came from being fully autistic to having a near genius IQ.
Wow.
So they're tapped in. They're really tapped in. And I really appreciate what I learned there. Within my first hour, I want to say, my whole life was changed because Barry Neil Kaufman was teaching about the power of belief systems. And it just lit up my soul. Like it answered something that was dormantly knowing, and it just brought this to life. So not only did I learn about belief systems, but I also did a dialogue through the process of what he called the Optiva dialogue that was offered through the Options Institute. And the very first session, I was asked a series of questions like, so what are we dealing with today? Oh, myasthenia gravis. Oh, what's that? Muscular paralysis. What's that like for you? Oh, it sucks. Blah, blah, blah. Down into this question that I was asked, because out of my mouth came this answer, well, I need to be perfect. And the next question was the question that did it for me. what makes you believe you need to be perfect? And within the question was the answer. And that's not always the case with people. Sometimes they can't go into the answer, but I was able to go into the answer. And the answer was, wow, I don't need to be perfect. I just never thought about that before. And the cascade, I learned so much, Dr. Jannine, from this. I learned so much in that moment of time because I had a spontaneous healing. My muscles filled with strength. I felt the flow of the vital force fill in my body. My eyes cleared up. I could breathe again.
Wow.
Um, it was truly remarkable and miraculous. Of course, it's just what was happening was I believed I needed to be perfect. And I judged myself through that lens of perfection. I never made it. I never made perfection. So I was always beating myself up. And that energy turned against myself is the perfect formula for autoimmune disease.
Mm-hmm.
Because the body, in my awareness, is the faithful puppy dog for the mental emotional field. It does what you tell it to do. If you're like, good dog, it's like wagging its tail, it's full of life and joy. If you're like, what's wrong with you? Like, stupid, 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 which is what I was doing in myself perpetually, it'll turn against itself. And the way it does so is with the immune system because it can attack.
Mm-hmm.
The immune system can attack and it can defend. It's better that it defends and attacks those little things we don't want. So I was attacking myself. And when I removed from the cause this idea that I need to be perfect and said I don't, then the attacking stopped right away. And my body was restored. Almost, almost like that. Maybe it took a few minutes, but it was really like, oh yeah, there it is. There's my life force again. So I'll never forget that. And it's been the torch that has enabled me to wade through a lot of darkness in the program, my own darkness, doubt in practice. When we start as naturopathic doctors, we could have doubt, right? Like insecurities. But because I had that experience, there was no doubt about it for me. And so I have developed a program to train people. I basically I took the Optiva dialogue that I learned from Baron Neil Kaufman, and I've evolved it over the last 25 years for naturopathic practice, so to speak, for working with a lot of physical stuff. Because through the Vis Dialogue, I call it the Vis Dialogue. Vis being from the Latin, as you know, vis medicatrice naturae, the healing power of nature. So it's the healing power of nature dialogue, which helps people to start with their chief complaint, which could be mental, emotional suffering or physical pathology, physical chronic illness. It could be acute too, but let's stick with chronic for now. And by asking similar questions, which I've evolved, getting to the root cause in the mind so that the patient, the client, the person can see with their conscious mind into the subconscious world where these beliefs are operating, our software, our mental, emotional software and impacting our physiology. And so, I train doctors now and other practitioners and lay people who are into healing. We're at the point today where people have a lot of knowledge. So they're not just completely in the dark. They're taking care of themselves. They're doing stuff, So I will train lay people when they show signs of having that ability, how to do this in my program called Holistic Counseling, the Vis Dialogue. So yeah. Did I answer everything there? I feel like it was a pretty thorough answer.
It's a lot, right? It's a lot for folks to unpack in terms of, if they've been listening to my podcast for a while, they've heard me say you have everything inside of you to heal yourself. And I
Yes.
say it a lot. And, did I believe that when I first started naturopath school? No. And did I believe it when I watched my mom die of cancer? No, that was in '04. I graduated in '07. By the time I graduated, I started to really be like, what is this beast crap? And really like doubted, right? Went through like a whole thing. But the
Yeah.
longer I've been in the practice and started to realize on my own, like you said, your own journey, my own journey of like intense anxiety and burnout, I realized like I could talk to myself, I could ask myself the questions. And this is much like, a lot of people may have heard of Byron Katie. The questions like,
Yeah. Yeah,
those kind of
definitely. The
questions.
work.
Yeah. Yeah. You're asking yourself questions. You're getting to know your inner self. And, you know, another big thing I like to tell folks is like question everything that's happened to you, question the whole process. And so it sounds like what you're doing with your series of questions to the Vis is literally asking what went wrong? What do I need? What's up here? Like obviously not exactly in those questions, but
But definitely along that lines. Yeah. What I would say is what I'm asking is what what have you adopted in your mind to help you survive your trauma, to help you survive your wounding? We've all been wounded. This world now, ideally, maybe at some point in the future, it'll evolve greater, but it's an imperfect world. Our parents are wounded themselves, so they're not capable of loving us the way we'd like. So we get wounded and we either literally learn from our parents their beliefs, or because of the nature of the pain that we can't wrap our heads around because we come from the belly of the divine. It doesn't make sense to our soul what's going on. And we can't control the world around us, but what we can control is our reality. And so we create a form of control in the form of a false belief system to try to almost encapsulate the hurt. So our mind tries to encapsulate the hurt so we can deal with it better. It helps us survive, but it keeps the hurt locked in, and that will grow in time. So basically, what I'm looking for with the Vis Dialogue is to understand, to dust around the edges, and to really evoke an understanding of what is precisely the language of the false belief system. And then when we can derive that, and when the person could see that, then we ask the question, which puts it into the realm of choice. Do you want to keep believing this? Because we could understand this is what we believe, but to be asked the question, do you want to believe this, is an invitation to recognize you don't have to.
right.
So the complexity in that deep spot is that the person has become very identified with that belief as a means of survival. But it's surviving something that happened then, and it's not happening now. And there was another thing that they could have done then, even though in many cases it's not realistic to consider that for a child, but it is part of the healing work that I do and that I share with people, is bringing your adult self, your wiser, older self, to your child and helping them look at a new choice, a new way of choosing. Because, there's this Mayan principle that by changing the past, we could change the now, because the now is based on the past in terms of the healing potential that we have. So if we're locked up into this way of surviving, then we're not living in the now as it offers us this immeasurably powerful healing energy, right? So by going back and holding the hand of the inner child and saying, okay, how would you have done it differently if you were given another chance? And a person will say, oh, I wouldn't do it differently. I had to do that. And that shows that they're not ready for healing. By continuing to bring them there, Dr. Jannine, by continue to ask them, working with them, angles, different questions, they get fluid in their mind. And then they start to say, oh, yeah, I would do it like this now. Then that means they're ready to be healed now, because they could change then. It's kind of a fascinating principle. of healing and through the mind. Very, very interesting.
I like it. I think I've been dabbling in this without knowing exactly what I was dabbling in, because of course we always, we're trained to go back to like, when did this come about for you? When did these symptoms start? But then I've started now to take it into, well, what do you think's going on? And
Mm,
where do you think it's coming from? And diving into those kind of things, because it does seem that for a lot of chronic things, especially the autoimmune, there's some deep emotional component there that the body's hanging on to. And
yeah.
yeah, yeah.
I think Buddha had this quote. I'm not sure what writings it's from. I just know the quote. Everything is mind. And I understand that in different ways. I understand one of it to mean every dash thing, everything that is a thing is mind, because there is something that's beyond mind. So not everything is mind, because there's something beyond mind. When the mind is still, there is an experience of the nature of creation, which is beyond the mind. So it's not everything is mind, but everything that is manifest that you could see, smell, touch, think, and feel is mind. And so the body is mind too. It's mind energy. So when we have a belief, which is a conditionality of that unconditional nature of the I am, of that source that's beyond the mind, when we have a conditionality that we're holding on to in our mind, the body reflects that, because the mind has this conditionality. Everything is mind. So it becomes a reflection of that mind. And then the body holds that in place. Like, if, one of the most common belief systems is I'm not good enough.
Mhm.
I'd say 8 out of 10 people believe that ultimately in their core. I'm not good enough. Ergo, I need to try. I need to make the effort. I need to compensate by having a lot of money. I need to be the CEO of Microsoft. I need this. I need these things to make me conditionally okay to compensate for this false belief.
Mhm.
But ultimately, the belief is false. So when it's released, the person can return to a natural state of being human, which is to be a child of God, existing in this powerful energy field that heals stuff like that, like that. And the reason why sometimes healing takes a long time, like months, is because we have one foot on the gas, one foot on the brake. We're still resisting. We're still doing the pattern. We're trying to let go at the same time as letting go. It's an interesting thing being human, but the potential is there for the vital force, the energies that flow through acupuncture meridians, that get absorbed through the chakras. That energy, when it's uninhibited by the false mind, immediately restores the body to harmony.
I I of course love acupuncture. I am being an acupuncturist. I love all of the subtle things that help with the balance of the just as you're doing the self work. And this is kind of something I want folks to think about, because I think there is this idea that if you're working on the mind, you're just working on the mind. That's all you're doing.
Right, right.
And I want folks to know that it's holistic. We're trying to do lots of, it's not just mind. It's not just supplements. It's not just one, it's multiple.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I agree with that sentiment. And I want to take it into a little bit of how I understand it as well. So people have thought mistakenly that holistic means that you have a problem with the knee, so you give something for the knee, and you have an emotional issue, so you take Bach flower remedies, and then mental stuff where you learn meditation, and it's all piecemeally.
Right.
I see working through the mind actually as the holistic point around which the body, the emotions, the mind, everything does coalesce. So we're not leaving out the body by working with the mind. In fact, when I start with a person that has chronic illness and the body level, I start asking all about the physical symptoms, its manifestation, where it radiates. the old cart stuff,
Mhm.
onset, location, direction, you know, things that happen with the symptoms, what makes it better, what makes it worse. And then through the physical, I ask questions and the person will start to describe how they feel with their pathology, how they feel about their pathology. And then it starts to sound like they're not talking about the physical stuff anymore. They're talking about an issue in their life.
Mhm.
So it goes from the physical into the mental, emotional. What's his name? Dr. Paul Epstein, who's a big mind body medicine guy, naturopathic elder. Uh, he calls it our biography becomes our biology.
Mhm.
I like that. So, um, and, you know, naturopaths, when they take, everybody says this when they take my program, naturopathic doctors, they're like, yeah, but you still need the supplements. You still need to address the physical stuff. And I say, no, you don't. But there are there are plenty of cases where it's very helpful and you might actually need to. But the potential by working through the mind to heal the body is there. That's there. But in certain cases, you know, maybe the person's vital force is so low that they can't think enough, or they're so overwhelmed emotionally that they're not in a place where their mind can do the work and do the healing. In that case, we have our toolbox to
Mhm.
help those cases where, okay, we're not quite there yet. And maybe when the person stabilizes down the road, the vital force kicks in, we stimulate the vital force through different means, then we could work in helping them understand what they've believed about themselves, what they've chosen to believe, which is not true. And I think that that's the most important place to heal
Mhm.
because it's where the person is most empowered, they're most, and it has the most potential to invigorate and vitalize the body by those false beliefs. Because a core belief, it's like right at the reactor, you know, like Captain James T. Kirk, right at the reactor of the USS Enterprise, right there with that nuclear reactor. If there's a false belief in there, it has the most huge impact on the life and the vital force of the person.
Okay. Okay. So I mean, obviously the way we think, how we think about ourselves is the catalyst here. And the
Yes.
root, if we want to get to root cause or someone, we want to go to that kind of thing. So using tools like acupuncture, other things, it's kind of amplifiers to help in that case,
Sure.
if that's how we're kind of looking at it or how you're looking at it. Makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I love acupuncture too. I fell in love with acupuncture when I was studied, but I kind of chose to focus more predominantly on homeopathy. And unfortunately, I've lost some of my knowledge. Well, I haven't lost it; it's buried in the archives of my memory. But you know, there's what do you call it? The order of practicing. Dr. Jared Zeff and Pamela Snyder made it. It's the, what's that called? I'm blanking out now on the,
Only thing I'm coming up with is the order to heal,
yeah,
like
yeah, it's
the way
it's
we
the
heal.
therapeutic order.
There we go. Yep. Yep.
So the therapeutic order, according to this guy, Dr. Moshe, is that you start with the mind. You go to the belief systems. And if the energies are so stuck, then you move the energies with homeopathy, with acupuncture, with Bach flower remedies, with massage, whatever. You move the energy. And if it's still stuck, then we look for an obstacle to cure. What is the obstacle? Then we address that. So, but I always take the first step into strictly working with the mind, with the belief system. And I'll often, very often, have first sessions with my patients that are very life changing. And we reveal the belief is revealed. Person sees it. They realize they don't want to work and they're like, no, I don't want to live that way. And I say, okay, you know what? I might even know a remedy for them. I won't give the remedy, I'll hold off on the remedy because they have everything that they need to heal. Then I'll say in a follow-up, I'll see how are they doing? Are they 95% better? Are they 10% better? Are they 0% better? Have they got it, but then they went right back in their life and then they're stuck again? So if they're stuck and they keep getting stuck, it happens, right? Like
Yeah.
again, a good doctor goes through hell. We understand how easy it is to get lost in life. So then we can pull out our other tools and give homeopathy and move chi with acupuncture and et cetera, et cetera. So that's sort of my approach. And not every naturopathic doctor that comes through my training is comfortable with that approach. They like to use more tools. And I respect that. Although as a purist, you when you let's say, for lack of a better word, when you restrict the treatment, let's say you restrict yourself to just one modality, you get really good at that modality,
Hmm.
right? So if you encounter a little resistance or a little struggle and you're like, okay, we got to do something else, you change gears too quickly, you might lose an opportunity to unlock at the level of the mind and to really hone your skills on how to do that. So it's just a little thing I like to share, but I respect because you are a sovereign being. Every person that comes through my training is a sovereign being, meaning God lives in them, aka the vital force, the vital healing energy. And so they are the ones that need to decide what's right for the people they're working with. So I do emphasize that too, but I also give a little bit of like a stick to the ribs, just to push people a little bit past their comfort zone to get into working deeply with the mind, because it's more comfortable to give stuff than it is to work in the mind because it's a very unknown field. It's like a minefield. The mind is a minefield, and it takes a lot of experience and a lot of knowing oneself to like work effectively in it.
Yeah, to be comfortable and trust the process, because I think for a lot of us, we want to get results for people, we want to get them fast, and if it's not happening, I mean, I've made these mistakes for, many times where we'll switch out of things probably too soon.
Right,
And
right.
and in chronic illness, let's be real here, the longer someone's had something, the more sensitive someone is, the less they can handle anyway. And this is where I'm always going to go to the mind, is when someone's body is, I call it, as putting the middle finger up to every single thing you try.
Uh-huh.
This is
That's
the
great.
mind. Yeah. Yeah.
That's
It happens.
great. So true. So true. I do appreciate that very much. Very much. Yeah. Um, I think, you know, one of the things I like to share that I like to emphasize is this, I call it the implications for life and the evolution of the soul. So we have many means of helping a person get better, from the most crude suppression of symptoms, which is not truly getting better, but the symptoms go away. So you say, oh, they're better. But then that vital force mistunement is going to then pop its head up in a worse way, to, really good nutrition, good supplementation. Um, we could do hydrotherapy. We could do things that reduce inflammation and reduce the manifestation of the symptoms, but that don't necessarily address them at the root cause in the mind where the person is making a choice.
Right.
And I don't want to say there's anything wrong with that. There's just a missed opportunity for that person to understand themselves better and to evolve in their very relationship with who they are as a child of the divine. Because I do believe that what we're here to do on earth is ultimately to evolve, to recognize who we truly are, which is as children of the creator, children of the divine. And illness is an amazing opportunity, an amazing messenger to understand where we're stuck in that evolution. So yeah, that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is a great way for folks to really visualize, like, because a lot of people will be like, it's not stuck in my head, but it's, okay, but But what is your body trying to tell you, right? What are we working with here? These symptoms are a sign of something deeper. They're a sign of somewhere where you got stuck in your journey. And I don't know if you found this 9 times out of 10. 9 times out of 10, I find that it's something that someone wanted to do and they didn't do. Or
Oh,
some type of, I wasn't good enough and I wanted to do this. And it was the tipping point. Or they couldn't, like thyroid. I mean, if we go back to Louise Hay, and all of the emotional components of different organs. So,
yeah,
I just want to sum it up for folks in terms of if they're sitting here thinking like, okay, I've gone to counseling. I've gone to, you know, I've done EFT tapping. I've done, CBT type of counseling. I've done a mushroom
yeah,
trip. Let's
yeah.
let's break it down in terms of okay, you've done all those things and still nothing's changed. You We got to help on the questions. We got to get deeper in the questions,
Yeah,
correct?
we got to get deeper in the questions. We got to get deeper into understanding what our problem really is. And that could take a long time
Mhm.
because human beings are complex and we're like onions. We got
Mhm.
lots of layers. And so we start with where we're suffering is the most, at least in the moment, superficial layer. So we find out, okay, we get to the bottom of that through really honest integrity, like honest, asking ourselves questions. Um, Buddha again said, I'm not a Buddhist or anything. I just really appreciate a lot of the teachings of Buddhism. Buddha said that person has to be willing to gnaw themselves to the bone.
Yeah.
So you have to be brutally honest with oneself, willing to see whatever it is and go through that horribly painful cognitive dissonance to recognize where the ego is unnecessarily doing something that's really not good for us. So we go through these layers. We got to get as deep as we can. And, I am able to help somebody in one session to get right to that core level. It doesn't happen all the time, but I would say it happens most of the time. So the Vis Dialogue is because of the way it's set up, it's more effective than cognitive behavior therapy, CBT. It's more effective than just tapping. It's because it's getting right to the root so that the person can see with their conscious mind and not be told through counseling.
Right.
Because a lot of counseling is advice based, or, oh, you fall into this archetype, therefore you need to do this and this and this. So you're taking the word of somebody versus seeing for yourself where your problem lies.
Right.
Once you see that, there's no going back. It's life changing. And I think it's the most effective way to help someone in this modality, in this realm of mental, emotional healing. Um, Also, or like Louis C.K. says, but sorry, do you know what I mean? Like by Louis C.K. He said, yeah, he's so funny. So a person can learn what their belief system is, but there could be a lot of attachments to it. And I call these tendrils. So we could get to the belief in the first session, and it could take many sessions to remove all of the attachments to it, all the tendrils. So it is like a battle. It's a battle between our true nature and our false nature, our soul spirit truth and our ego false personas, masks that we wear. And so it's just a matter of dedication and devotion. Like I think each of us has to at some point say, that's it. I'm putting my foot down. I don't need to be perfect. I give myself the leeway to make mistakes, but I commit to truth. I commit 100% to truth. Doesn't mean I have to be perfect, but that commitment really helps to accelerate a person through their healing to get to the root versus this sort of, leeway that we give ourselves to go into forgetting and suppression and drinking or eating away our stuff and just, you know what I mean? I know for myself, before I made that commitment, I would give myself carte blanche, freedom to just go and stick my head in the sand for a while.
Yeah.
It's okay to rest and have fun and to have entertainment, no problem. But to never turn one's back on one's true nature. I would recommend a commitment to that because the earth is filled with lots of challenges. And if one is choosing sort of half in, half out, we can easily get swayed and get a lot of gunk on us. Then we're going to have to just get off again. And then more gunk comes on. We have to get it off again versus the energy that it takes to drill down into the subconscious and to release ourselves at the depths. That takes perseverance. It takes energy. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely does. There's work involved. And I think, we have to get to that realization that we do have to put in the work.
Yeah.
How long is your initial visit? Just out of curiosity with someone, how long might that be?
Yeah. It runs about 90 minutes and sometimes up to 2 hours.
Okay.
Sometimes it's a little less, like if we really hit the spot and the person is just like really in a place of peace. I like them to do too much more chat, too much neocortex, conscious mind stuff. I like them to just sit there, so it might be a little less. Yeah.
Gotcha. And then with multiple tendrils, I think a lot of folks might be thinking, okay, now how long on average do folks work with you? And can they, work with you or someone who's been trained by you? Can they work with them for kind of an extended period, just to like maintenance mode, if you will?
Yeah. Yeah, sure. And stuff comes up, new issues arise, and you might be really upset about it. Like something happens with your child, or somebody says something to you. You want to work through it. Yes, you can do that. Also, we can look at, if somebody has a particular chief complaint. One of the things I'll start with them on the chief complaint. And then what I love to hear is when they start complaining about other things.
Mm.
Because that means that the chief complaint is resolving, right? Like it's not on the roster anymore. That's a great sign. So it could be anywhere from one or a few sessions, maybe 2, 3, to years.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on the person. Depends, like you said, how long they've been sick for. It depends on how deeply ingrained their beliefs are, and it also depends on intensity and severity of their suffering when they grew up.
Mm-hmm.
Because some people's suffering is just unfathomably difficult. And the wound is so deeply embedded that it takes time. It really does take one level at a time. And we really need to gain ground and not lose ground. Because like, let's say, in a battle, if you gain ground, you don't want to give up the ground that you've gained. You want to integrate that and make sure it's because it becomes a stepping stone for the next deep level. So yeah, so it could take years. I have patients I'm still working with, and we're always making headway, always. But the big hoorah release of the vital force and the resolution of the physical symptoms hasn't happened. Like for instance, in multiple sclerosis, like that's a doozy of an illness.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually developed a theory around that a person develops an illness which is resonant with the degree of severity of their belief system. So if they have a very, very intensely embedded or very suppressed emotion, they'll manifest a much more difficult illness. The illnesses that we consider very, very chronic or incurable. And if a person's wound is more superficial, then they'll manifest a chronic illness, which is a mirror of that, and therefore can resolve more easily and more readily.
That makes sense. That makes sense. Just in the trajectory I'm thinking about certain clients right now, I'm like, yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, yeah. That's cool. That's cool. I'm glad it does. Yeah, I'm glad it does.
I think at this point, we've got to tell folks how they can get in touch with you, how
Sure.
I've heard that also you said that you don't necessarily have to be a naturopath. You can be a different type of practitioner. You could be a layperson who understands the concept and wants to learn more. And part of
Yes.
me was kind of thinking even about, perhaps folks who are in a counseling, not a counselor, but they're in a religious group and helping folks, in terms of
Yeah.
crisis or what it may be. That's kind of how I thought in my head. I'm like, oh, this could be really cool for someone who's kind of a pastor trying to work through some things too with
Oh,
it.
100%. I've even taught like doulas and midwives because if they're sitting with their clients, the pregnant ladies, and they're going to be going into labor, the beliefs that they have, that they carry about being a mom, going through labor, what's going on with their partners, it is so vital to the actual birthing process. So that's another example of people that really benefit from it. People that are working with psychedelics,
Mm.
this really dovetails beautifully with psychedelics because if you're working to facilitate people's healing, you know how to ask the questions, can really accelerate that change. I have two offerings. One is for my personal healing. Like you just have an issue, you want to come and work with me on it. So you could just see me at Dr. Dr. Dash, like minus sign Moshe, Moshe.com. And then if you want to train, and when you train, you actually also get the same amount of sessions with me. You get 6 sessions of the personal physician heal thyself, we call it, or healer heal thyself. And then you get 3 courses and you get a mentoring for how to do the Vis Dialogue. You get 6 of those sessions. And that would be at holistic, HOLISTIC dash again, like a minus sign, counseling with 1 L. So it's COUNSELING.ca. And that's the 1 year certification program in the Vis Dialogue. So those are my two offerings, and yeah, thanks so much for that opportunity to share, Jannine. I really appreciate it. Yeah, it's great.
My pleasure. I am all in on really awakening folks to taking back their own power when it comes to their health and really being able to look within because, you know, we have so much social media. We have so many experts and their amazing programs.
Yeah, yeah,
And I I never chose to do program because I never felt that it was going to be, I tried, I dabbled, right? And I was like, I just can't do this because I don't believe in it. I don't believe in it. Everyone's individual. And so stuff like
yeah.
this, programs like yours are very aligned with the way I'm looking at how health is really
I
achievable.
love that. I love what you're saying. It's so true. When a person heals themselves by means of making better choices into reality, which is really just aligning with who they really are.
Yeah.
It's letting go of the conditionalities of their mind, and it's acquiescing or falling into the unconditional nature of their true self. It's like the most empowering way because the person then has no doubt that the source of all is inside of themselves. So they don't need anything. And they become truth self thinkers. They think for themselves, something that is very vital and lacking on our planet and that causes problems, when people don't think for themselves.
Oh boy. We could do a whole podcast on that one.
Yeah, for
For
sure, for sure.
for sure.
I do feel a lot of good positive movement of energy happening. There's still challenges to be faced individually for ourselves and collectively, but I think humanity's heading in a good direction. I have hope for humanity.
Me too.
Yeah,
Me too.
good.
That's why I want to put this out and keep working hard on it so that everybody, that's open to it can get the chance to really step into their own power.
Yeah, absolutely. Good stuff. Amen.
Yes. Thanks again.
Hey, fellow health junkie, thanks for listening to the Health Fix podcast. If you enjoyed tuning in,
Please help support me to get the word out about the podcast. Subscribe, rate, and review, and just get that word out. Thanks again for listening.